Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, Oregon, Washington, Florida State, Miami could be the Big Ten's next great rivalry.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
At this point, we know all about Florida State and Clemson's lawsuits against the ACC. We know all about the out clause that ESPN has, the decision that needs to be made in February of 2025, where the worldwide leader can wipe their hands of the ACC, and then all bets are off when the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12 are going to put their hands into the cookie jar when it comes to some of the most valuable brands that currently exist in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I already believe that the bread is in the toaster when it comes to the ACC being fried, when it comes to the ACC becoming toast, right? I just think it takes somebody to pull down the lever, and those actions I think are going to take place over the next 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 months from now. I actually think we're going to learn a lot about the ACC's future this week, right? The proposed week of the House versus NCAA settlement, because once revenue sharing becomes a reality, this thing is going to expedite with brands like Florida State, like Clemson, like North Carolina, like Miami, like Virginia Tech, because if they want to be able to compete at that highest level, they're going to need that cash, that inflow of media money to be able to compete. So they're going to want to get to the SEC. They're going to want to get to the Big Ten. Maybe a slightly more valuable Big 12 might even be a better option right now than the ACC is. So we're going to find out really quickly how much these teams really want to get to that next level. Considering I think that the ACC is already toast, you've got Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, and Brett Yormark all waiting outside these 18 toasters determining what piece of fried bread that they are going to take when it comes to our beloved Big Ten. At this point in time, I believe there are two choices, and they are the choices, and they both reside in the Sunshine State. It's Florida State and it's Miami, because together they are a very strong commodity. We're going to get to football eventually because we know that's what I care about on this channel. That's what you care about on this channel. And the football rivalry is a huge part to the valuable addition that Florida State and Miami bring as a combination. But first, before football, because to be admitted into the Big Ten Conference, you got to get the Big Ten presidents to vote you in. And what do presidents care about? They care about academics and they care about research, especially in the Big Ten Conference. Miami is one of those schools, when you look at their profile, their outside of football profile, they seem to really fit into what the Big Ten wants. This is a university that has an acceptance rate below 20%. It is a very prestigious university down south. They just became an AAU member, so we know the research is on par with what others in the Big Ten Academic Alliance certainly want as well. But Ted, Florida State is not an AAU member. How many times have I heard that recently? Well, just stop your roll, slow your roll right there, because Florida State's maybe number one priority as a university is to gain membership into AAU. They are certainly no slouch when it comes to their academic profile. It's just they lack those three letters. And when you look at the 2023 to 2027 strategic plan for Florida State, AAU and becoming a top research university is one of their top priorities. This coming from that specific strategic plan from President Richard McCullough. This is smack dab on one of the first few pages. Quote, "We have a bold vision for Florida State University that goes well beyond becoming a top 10 public university and AAU member institution." Okay, there are two main priorities: top 10 and an AAU member institution. FSU has the highest amount of National Science Foundation research funding in the state of Florida. A lot of people felt that they were snubbed in favor of USF when it came down to these latest applications being approved for some of these schools to get into AAU. I could very well see the Big Ten presidents looking at the academic profile of what the Seminoles provide and say, hey, get into AAU by the time 2027, 2028 or something like that, they might give them a certain amount of time, and there's probably going to be some horse trading behind the scenes to get them to that point. I think there's no doubt that Florida State fits in outside of football. They just need that one box checked. Florida State gaining admission into the Big Ten Conference is an interesting case study because I just talked about the Big Ten presidents maybe giving FSU a window of gaining AAU accreditation by a certain point. And I think they are willing to be flexible on that because Fox really wants Florida State, I feel. They are simping for the Seminoles. Because when you look at the recent TV reveals in this schedule, this season, for the 2024 season, the first of the 18-team variety, I believe there's a ton of value for CBS and NBC because we know that West Coast home games are only going to be on those two networks when it comes to the bigger West Coast home games, when it comes to those selections as well. And even some other picks. We see Michigan and USC in Ann Arbor, Michigan being a CBS game when I thought it would be a noon game. So they might try to avoid West Coast teams playing in that 9 o'clock local time window to begin with. So Fox really wants some more inventory. Fox really wants some more value. And Florida State and Miami certainly check that box on the East Coast. Florida State, Ohio State, Miami against Penn State. There's some really intriguing matchups that you could certainly put into that big noon slot and add even more value to the biggest time window and the most popular time window right now in college football. Whether it's Florida State or whether it's any other edition from here on out, the Big Ten presidents are going to have to balance the academic profile and what they bring to the Big Ten Academic Alliance with also the financial gain and the value athletically that they bring into the conference. Florida State is that perfect case study where maybe it kind of teeter-totters back and forth. But I think we all know what the value is that the Seminoles bring to this conference from a television side. Can we take a moment to appreciate the timing? Can we take moments to appreciate a 13-0 season and an ACC title going into that Orange Bowl last year for Florida State? Can we take more moments to appreciate the investment that the University of Miami is putting into their football program right now? This may be, if Miami can even get to that 9-win level, if Miami can get to that 10-win level, the timing couldn't be better for the Big Ten Conference because Florida State and Miami together as the collective, this might be a 20-year high for both programs right now. I know Florida State won a national championship in 2013. They made the playoff both with Jameis Winston at quarterback in 2014. 2017, the turnover chain year where Miami went 10-2, lost to Wisconsin in that Orange Bowl game. That one really good year under Mark Richt. I think they've both in a phone booth compared to the other, have had really good seasons. But together, they really, over the last 20 years, they both really haven't had really good years in the same year. And they both haven't been very good at the same time. I just feel with Mario Cristobal in Coral Gables, with Mike Norvell in Tallahassee, both of these programs are on a meteoric rise right now. And I feel like Tony Petitti and company are just sitting back in the Big Ten office, maybe knowing what's going to happen in February of 2025, just sitting back and watching these teams continue to build up their brand once again into some of the biggest brands in college football, like it was in the late 90s and the 2000s. And then when it eventually comes crumbling down, the Big Ten can get into the state of Florida. We don't need to overstate what Florida State is right now. Everybody knows the spear. Everybody knows the garnet and gold. And winning on the football field is extremely important to Florida State and their value right now as it pertains to getting out of the ACC and potentially getting in a Power 2 conference like the Big Ten. But Miami, right, is where I really want to focus my attention right now. This is a program that is clearly dumping the Brinks truck into football once again. You look at Cam Ward, you look at Damian Martinez and the NIL commitment that was made to get both of those guys into Coral Gables. You look at the recruitment of 5-star defensive lineman Justin Scott that flipped from Ohio State to Miami. Word on the street is that there were a couple of few Benjamins at stake that maybe played a role in that decision as well for him to line up at the University of Miami. That is a big part of this, is the financial commitment for some of these schools, specifically a Miami that wants to get to that level that their rival Florida State is right now. And let's talk about the rivalry. I'm getting chills just thinking about it, because these two teams have the potential to rekindle one of the greatest rivalries in college football. When the Seminoles and the Hurricanes are at their peak, this is as good as it gets, folks. And this is what I'm most excited about as a Big Ten fan. We have so many great rivalries in this conference. Adding another rivalry, and it's not an end-of-the-year rivalry. This is usually a game that takes place right smack dab in the middle of the season, which I think adds a little bit more value in terms of going through each thing week by week within the schedule, maybe for somebody like Fox. Somebody my age in their mid-30s can appreciate what Florida State and Miami was in the late 90s. Wide left, wide right. They were always two of the best teams in college football, and they always put on absolute classics of college football games. The timing of these two teams rising up in college football, being able to bring in the talent that they are able to bring in, having really good to great coaches leading these specific programs is just an absolute treasure trove right now for the Big Ten. And Tony Petitti is just sitting back and seeing dollar signs right now when it comes to both of these teams, because I think he knows just how valuable they are to his main broadcast partner over there in Fox. If the Big Ten can bring in this rivalry and the state of Florida into their conference, it would become one of the best rivalries in the conference, not just by itself, but because of where these programs sit right now in the hierarchy of college football. That, of course, is dependent on Miami really taking that step up, because when we talk about the Miami Hurricanes, especially as of late, it's a lot like Texas A&M. It's a lot like Nebraska. It seems like every year they look very talented and they look very good, but they always seem to underperform. This year is such a big year to continue to build that value if these teams are able to jump to the Big Ten in a few years. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you view Florida State and Miami as the ads outside of Notre Dame for the Big Ten Conference right now? Or do you think it's something else? Are you Team Clemson? Are you Team North Carolina? Leave all of that in the comments below, and maybe some memories you have of Florida State-Miami games from the past. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.